Okay, in this video I want to talk a little bit about hybridization. What are hybrids? What is open pollinated? And what is an heirloom? What does these terms mean when you see this on the seeds that you buy or the plants you grow? So oftentimes I'm asked, and actually quite often, are these tomatoes or are these peppers or is this tomato or is this pepper a hybrid? And we're going to get into what a hybrid is and the differences in hybrids you buy in the store as far as seed or plant goes than a hybrid in general. So let's start with heirlooms. What is an heirloom? An heirloom is a variety of vegetable that's been grown for, some say, 80 or more years, or some say 70 or more years. Okay. So an heirloom is basically a variety of tomato or pepper or any vegetable that has been either hybridized in the beginning, cultivated that hybridization to the point where it's stabilized and it's stayed in the family heirloom for 80 or more years. All right, so it's just like any other heirloom, like an heirloom family ring or an heirloom dish set or teapot or anything that's an heirloom has been handed down from generation to generation for 80 years, and that's what makes it an heirloom. Now, in a world of animals, not to digress, but if we're talking about the world of animals, for example, chickens, goats, pigs, in that sense, where the same chicken has been bred over and over, it might consider a vegetable a hybrid, but in the world of animals, we call those heritage. So they're not heirlooms, but they're heritage, okay? So just make sure you understand that. So we're not really going to talk too much about that, but I just wanted to point that out to you that the animal heirloom thing is not actually called heirlooms, it's called heritage. All right, so now, all heirlooms were hybrids at some point. Heirlooms did not come to be where they are simply by being an heirloom. They had to start off as a hybrid. They go from a hybrid to basically open pollinated, then to an heirloom. They earn that title that way. Now that you are aware of the fact that heirlooms were hybrids at one time, so when we talk about hybrids, hybrids start off at what we call an F1 would be a way to designate the first year of hybridization. And then usually by the 10th generation or 15th generation, you're usually stabilized, and we would refer to that every time after that as open pollinated. And so basically, it might be a stabilized version of that vegetable, but it's not an heirloom because it hasn't been around 80 years. So it might be around 30 years or 40 years, and it's a stabilized variety, but it's not an heirloom because it hasn't been around long enough. So we can't designate it with the name heirloom, but we can designate it with the name of open pollinated, and some people refer to that as stabilized version, and so on and so on. Most of the seeds you see out in the market today are not heirlooms. They're actually open pollinated varieties that are stabilized is what they are. They need to be around for 80 or more years, having been sold, to earn the title of an heirloom. We went from the hybrid to the heirloom to the open pollinated stage. All right, so we discussed all three of those. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hybrids that you see in stores. Now, a lot of people confuse hybrids with genetically modified organisms, GMO. Hybrids are not GMO. Please, guys, a lot of people say this to me. They're GMO. I don't want any hybrids. I don't want any GMO. They're not the same thing. We'll use tomatoes, for example. A genetically modified tomato is a tomato where they take genetics from a goat or a spider or a fish, and they take certain genetics from those creatures and they incorporate them into the tomato to make the tomato look bigger, taste better, whatever reason they do it. That's what a GMO is. It's not the same thing as hybridization. In fact, GMOs, if you try to grow out GMOs, they produce what's known as terminator seeds, so you can't even grow the seeds from most genetically modified products. The way GMO can contaminate organic products is through the cross-pollination. And so the pollen will actually contaminate perfectly good crops with GMO pollen and genetics. That's how that happens. It doesn't happen through seed, because usually the seed that comes out of anything that's genetically modified does not come true. Nature has a way of correcting itself. So it's not like you're going to create genetically modified corn, the corn cob is going to fall on the ground, and then hundreds of genetically modified corns are going to start growing. Now, it could happen. There actually could be some corns that actually survive, and they do reproduce. It's only going to go so far before that corn stops reproducing as a genetically modified organism. It's the cross-pollination is where the problem comes in with genetically modified, GMO. All right, so hybrids are not GMO, but they can be in some cases. So it's not foolproof, but in general, they are not the same thing. So when you go to a seed website and you see it's a hybrid, they're not genetically modified organisms, okay? Now, as far as the hybrids go, when you go to the store and you see like Bonnie Plants, or you see seeds in Lowe's or Walmart and it says hybrid on there, let's talk about that a little bit. Most people will tell you not to grow the seeds from a hybrid tomato or pepper, for example. I'm using those as examples because that's mostly what I grow. But most people will tell you don't grow the seeds or save the seeds from those vegetables because they're not going to come true every year. And there's some truth to that. What these big companies like Bonnie Plant, Vremi, and all these other American Seed and all these companies do with their hybrids, what they do every year is they cross the species that they want to make seed for every year, and then they provide you with that seed or plant that is going to be a F1 first hybrid every single year. For example, let's say I like Big Boy and it's a hybrid by Bonnie Plants. Okay. So every time I buy Big Boy as an F1 hybrid from Lowe's every year, that seed is crossed every single year. They call it bagging. They bag the plant, they bag the flowers, and they cross-pollinate it, and that variety stays 100% true. And then that way you get a consistent tomato variety every single year that is an F1, and it's going to be the exact same thing for that hybridization that they made. So when you go to save seed from that, generally the seeds are not going to come out true because hybrids are not stable. So by them doing that, they literally are able to secure the genetics of that plant in a de facto way without you having to take the seeds and grow them, and then you're going to propagate that now and steal their genetic creation. If you try to use the PVP system, the Plant Variety Protection Act, and you try to secure it, there's no way to test for your specific genetics. Okay? The only thing you could basically do with it is protect the name. So what big companies like Bonnie Plants and stuff like that, they hybridize the seed fresh every year, and their way of securing their variety of vegetables so nobody keeps growing them over and over is that they sell you F1 seed or they sell you F1 plants, and then the next year you go to grow them out because you save seed from it, they're not going to come out true. They're going to come out like something else because it's an F1. Now, there is a caveat to that. It's just like any other hybrid, and anytime you hybridize any kind of a vegetable, there's always a percentage value. It could be 1%, 2%, 3% of that seed is going to come out true the next year. And if you know what you're doing, you'll be able to phenotype that particular variety and stabilize that version in time. Because the cross-pollinating's already been done, you just need to stabilize it for 10 generations. Get it to F10, F15, whatever. Now you have a stabilized version, and now an open-pollinated version of that variety that was once a hybrid. Now, I'm not telling you to do that because that's actually, you're infringing on proprietary information. I'm saying in general that's how that would work. And in some cases I've actually done that. And just to see if I can actually stabilize a variety of pepper and tomato. And yes, you can actually stabilize these varieties. But it's not like you're going to get a consistent first year fruit, out of your seeds you save from the hybrid every single time. So you have to understand why big companies like Bonnie Plants and Vremi, for example, are going to do this, okay? So hybridized plants you see at Lowe's, again, we're recapping on this, hybridized plants you see at Lowe's or Walmart, those plants are always going to be F1 straight out the gate. So when you save seed for that, it's a high probability that those seeds that you grow from that are not going to be the same thing that you just bought. Now, they might look the same, but you're not going to quite get the same flavor. You're not going to get the same results. Plant's going to grow a little better, grow a little worse. It's going to kind of do some awkward things. It's not going to stay true. And eventually what will happen is the donor and the mother will begin to separate. Tomato or pepper variety, after about 3 or 4 times saving seed and growing it out without proper phenotyping, that seed will eventually resort to mother or its donor, most likely its mother, and it's going to start to take on a different shape, and it's going to lose certain features that were in it when you first bought the plant and harvested those tomatoes or peppers, that, for example, that you had saved seed for. So please understand that there is a very big difference between the hybrids you buy in the store and the stabilized, open pollinated versions of the seeds you will buy online. Some people have already done this. Now, Sweet 100 tomato, for example, is a good example of this. Somebody asked me the question, is it an heirloom or is it a hybrid? Well, I can tell you personally right out the gate that it's definitely not an heirloom, because I don't believe that the Sweet 100 tomato has been around for 80 or more years. So I'm pretty confident on that one. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty confident that it's not an heirloom. So is it a hybrid or is it open pollinated is the next question. So in my opinion, it's past the hybridization stage, because so many people have been regrowing that tomato for a couple of decades now that the variety of tomato is somewhat stabilized. Now, every time you buy seed doesn't necessarily mean that the seed that you're buying is going to be a stabilized version. So you might buy seed for the Sweet 100 tomato, and you're not going to get the true Sweet 100 effect unless you know where you're buying your seed from and the source, that they are very confident in how they select the tomatoes and the seed from the tomatoes that they want to be able to keep that variety stable. It's probably still a work in progress, but it's something that will eventually stabilize. It will absolutely be an open pollinated, stabilized version at some point. And that goes the same thing with the Sweet 1 million, the Sweet 1000. So there's a lot of different varieties that need to become stabilized. Now, be careful where you get your seed from, because if the process hasn't been 100% stabilized, there's a good chance you might not get the full effect that you're looking for out of the Sweet 100, for example, or the Sweet 1 million. When you buy a seed for the Sweet 1 million, that tomato bract should basically go from the top of the plant all the way down to the floor. You should see like 30 or 40 tomatoes on one bract. That's the idea of the Sweet 1 million. If you're not getting that, that means that the seed, it doesn't mean that it's wrong seed, it just simply means that the variety that you bought the seed from wasn't fully stable, or it wasn't phenotyped correctly, because the people you got the seed from probably bought the seed third party. You're going to get whatever they get. Doesn't mean that it's not a Sweet 1 million. It just means that the variety wasn't stable, and so the bonding of the genetics is kind of breaking apart, and you're getting a lot of different effects from it. But keep that in mind, that the hybrid versions you're buying from the store are always going to be F1 straight out the gate every single time, so you can't get an F10, for example. The only people who have maybe an F10 of that variety that you're buying a hybrid for would be like Bonnie Plant, for example, or it would be like Fairy Moore Seeds or something to that effect. They're going to have the original versions that are stabilized, and they always keep that in their seed vault, which is a proprietary company secret, and they're not going to release that to the public. They're going to always release to you F1s and hybrids. That's the only way that they can secure the genetics of their plants. There are 2 ways that a company can secure the genetics of the plants. And I'll do a video about this down the road, which is, 1, you can apply for a PVP certification, which is the Plant Variety Protection Act, and you can apply for that number, which is a bunch of garbage and a waste of time and money. Or you can do like what Bonnie Plants does, and they hybridize their seed every year, so there's no way, even if you grow it out, you're going to end up with a positive result every year, year in and year out, because then Bonnie Plants would go out of business. So that's why they do what they do. And the only other thing you can secure, for example, for a variety like Bonnie Plants would do, is they would get a trademark on the name that they specifically apply to that hybrid. So Big Boy, for example, they have a patent on the name Big Boy tomato. they will have the patent on that name, and they own the patent. So you can't legally grow or sell the seed from that. So that's how you secure your variety once you create a hybridization. You don't just do like what they did with the Carolina Reaper. What they did with the Carolina Reaper, I know I'm digressing here, but you might be interested in this. What they did with the Carolina Reaper, or what Ed Curry did, and what I believe he did is he created the Carolina Reaper, he put it out there, he started selling seeds on it, and he thought he was able to apply for a PVP, and that was going to protect him, and he's going to have, you know, all rights to all peppers. Nobody's going to be allowed to sell my variety. Problem is that the Plant Variety Protection Act doesn't protect you from the genetics. There's no physical testing or way to prove that that pepper is your variety. There's no way to prove it, so it doesn't protect you. I don't even know what it does. It doesn't protect the variety. So it's very difficult to actually get. The PVP Act is really created for big companies like Bonnie Plants and Vremi and those guys. It's not created for like the hobby people like us who grow these plants, and we apply for a PVP, which costs thousands of dollars to do, and in the end, people are still going to be able to save the seed from your peppers and then grow them out and then resell them as a Carolina Reaper, for example. And so what he tried doing down the road, and what he realized what he did down the road, is that PVP wasn't going to help him. So what he did down the road was he couldn't get a trademark patent on Carolina Reaper anymore, because it was actually an identifier of that variety of pepper now. So you can't even patent that anymore. It's like trying to patent the word potato. You can't patent a word potato because the potato is not patentable. It's an open domain and everything. You can't patent that word. You can't patent a fact. Okay, so he couldn't do that, so now he came up with an edge smoking Carolina Reaper, and that was the word that he went with the trademark, and it's already too late because everybody's growing a Carolina Reaper, and he's really getting screwed on his end. That's why he's not releasing Pepper X. These are the things that you should know about when it comes to hybrids, and these are the things you should understand between heirloom hybrids and open pollinated. I really want to try to clear that up. I hope I did the right job as far as doing that. I don't know if you're really going to understand all those terminologies, but if you have any questions about it, comment below. I'll do my best to try to re-explain it to you and try to make sure I clarify it a little better. I think I covered everything. There's probably more to talk about, but I can't make this video go on for hours. I can literally talk for hours about hybrids, open pollinated, this and that. I could go on for hours and hours and hours about it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.